everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys my historical romance honorable mentions from 2021. I've noticed that you guys have really been enjoying my historical romance content lately, and so I thought that I would do another video where I would talk about more historical romances that I truly loved last year, but they just didn't quite make my top 10. However, I gave all of these 5 stars and I do highly recommend all of them. Unlike my top 10 video, these are in no particular order. I'm just gonna kind of go through them. So first off, we have 3 of the books in the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. So Julia Quinn is an author that I first started reading in 2021. I actually did an entire reading vlog where I read most of the Bridgerton series. The only book that I did not read was book 1, but I will link that reading vlog up in the cards above. It's a very long vlog because I'm talking about like 7 books in it, but I overall had a really fun time with this series. Some books I enjoyed more than others, but these 3 books are my personal favorites of the series. So first we have book 3, which is An Offer from a Gentleman, and here is the stunning step back for this book. This is a first edition. I probably spent way too much money getting first editions of these books off of eBay, but it is what it is. This one is a Cinderella retelling about Benedict, who is the second eldest Bridgerton sibling, because we have Anthony and then Benedict, and then Sophie. And so basically she has like an evil stepmother and stepsisters, you know, the whole 9 yards, and her father has passed away. And so she goes to this random masquerade ball that I think the Bridgertons are throwing. And so Benedict meets her there. And so they just have this instant connection. You know, I definitely went into this book very skeptical just because I feel like there's so many Cinderella retellings out there, especially for romance novels. And so I just thought that this was going to be kind of run-of-the-mill, and I have to say, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, there's a reason why I gave it 5 stars. And it's also the first book in the Bridgerton series that I had given 5 stars. So I was truly blown away by this book in more ways than one. Next book that I truly loved in this series is To Sir Philip with Love. And here is the gorgeous step back for that one. This one is an epistolary romance between Sir Philip and Eloise Bridgerton. So she's one of the middle siblings in the bunch. Basically, Eloise and Philip have been writing to each other for a while, and so he proposes to her via letter, and so she moves in with him and his 2 children. And it says, Sir Philip knew that Eloise Bridgerton was a spinster, and so he'd propose, figuring that she'd be homely and unassuming and more than a little desperate for an offer of marriage, except she wasn't. And it kind of goes on from there, but I can also recall that he just kind of offered for her because he really needed a motherly figure for his 2 children. And yeah, I just thought this was absolutely fantastic. Again, highly recommend if you love epistolary romances or romances that center around letter writing. Really great. And then third, but certainly not least, is It's in His Kiss, which I believe is book 6, 7? Something like that, yeah. Beautiful step back again. This one is about Hyacinth, who is the second youngest sibling of the Bridgertons, and Gareth. And I just loved the dynamic between these 2 main characters. Hyacinth is a very like quirky and peppy and perky main character, and I just loved the way that these 2 interacted. And this is a fun book as well because I believe throughout most of it, Gareth and Hyacinth are collaborating to look for this like antique or this relic or something. I can't quite remember anymore. But what's also really fun about this book is that Lady Danbury is heavily featured because she is a relative of Gareth's. So yeah, I just truly enjoyed it. I would say if I had to pick like my ultimate favorite of the series, it's really tough for me to pick between Philip and It's in His Kiss, but I might say To Sir Philip. I think that this truly is a fantastic historical romance. Next up, of course, you knew this author was going to make this list. We have a book by Tessa Dare. This is A Night to Surrender, book 1 in the Spindle Cove series. Now, I have a pretty unpopular opinion when it comes to this book. Most people that I follow have given this book 3 stars. And I can kind of understand why, but like not really, because this is book 1 of the Spindle Cove series, and I adore the way that Tessa Dare introduced this little village and all of the people that live there. And also, this is a romance between Susanna and Victor Bramwell, he's the Earl of Rycliffe, he goes by Bram, he comes to live in Spindle Cove to basically form a militia there. It's a village of mostly women, and so there aren't many men for him to recruit for the militia, and so there's just a lot of hijinks that ensue in terms of like the formation of this militia and how Susanna and Bram provoke each other and challenge each other. It's just really fun, and I also adore how Susanna challenges Bram's views of women and their place in the world and all of that. I know that Bram is a hero that a lot of people have issue with, and I can see why, but I just love that Susanna never let him get away with his bullshit. So yeah, I think this is a really great book. Next up, we have Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. What's really interesting is that while I adored this book, I have read another historical romance from Maya Banks and I DNF'd it. I really did not like it. So this author has a lot of range for me, but this is a book that I read for a vlog where I read some of Riley Marie's favorite romances of all time, and this was a very pleasant surprise for me, though I've heard a lot of people that I follow rave and rave about this book, so I had a feeling I was going to enjoy it. But this book just has a very unique feel to me. This does take place in medieval Scotland, I would say. It's book 1 in the Montgomerys and Armstrongs series, and so we have our main character Evelyn. She is deaf, but people during these times did not understand that, and so they believe her to be touched. She is basically married off to Graham, who is a part of a rival clan in Scotland. What's really sweet about this one is that I can vividly remember the scene where they first meet, because like I said, Evelyn is deaf, but she can hear like really, really low frequencies. And so from the minute that she hears Graham's voice for the first time, she just finds it really pleasing to the ear. He just has like a very low speaking voice. And it's just like, this is such a sweet and wholesome romance, but also has like the perfect amount of steam. And it's definitely not like the most exciting or fast-paced romance, but it's just so sweet and so tender, and you just can't help but fall in love with these characters. And I also loved that Evelyn, our heroine, like I said, she's actually based off of Maya Banks's husband. I think that's just so freaking adorable. Next up, we have Kidnapped by the Pirate by Kira Andrews. This is truly an iconic historical pirate romance. If you're a historical romance lover like me, which I assume that you are if you're watching this video, you most likely also adore pirate romances, and this one will give you everything that you want from a pirate romance. This one is a pretty big age gap romance actually between Hawk, who is a pirate captain. He's like about 40 years old, I think, and then Nathaniel, who is about 18 years old. And basically the premise is that Hawk kidnaps Nathaniel, I believe, to get back at Nathaniel's father, because I think his father did some terrible things to Hawk in the past. And so it's a kidnapping, forced proximity romance as well, because Hawk decides to keep Nathaniel in his own bedroom. And so this is just fantastic. Like it's really, really something special. And this is the first book that I had read from Kira Andrews, and it just made me even more excited to check out more of her work. Next up on this list, let's talk about Miss Beverly Jenkins. I have Destiny's Captive. You may recall that I featured Destiny's Surrender, which is book 2 in this Destiny trilogy, in my top 10 historical romances of 2021, and I loved this romance almost just as much as Destiny's Surrender. This is another pirate romance, and it's fantastic. This is about our heroine Pilar and our hero Noah, who was the youngest of the 3 brothers that this series centers around. And this is so iconic. Literally, Pilar steals his ship from him. Like, it's just absolutely insane. And so he finds her, he goes after her. And so the scene where he finds her, she literally starts a sword fight with him. I am obsessed with books that have a sword fight between the hero and heroine. It's so freaking good. Oh my goodness. Next up, we have Unmasked by the Marquess by Cat Sebastian. This is book 1 in her Regency Imposters series. This is the first book that I read by Cat Sebastian that I had given 5 stars. I had read a few of her books before and had given them like 4.5 stars. I definitely really enjoy Cat Sebastian, but this one for me was just on another level. It really worked for me. What's amazing about this book is that it's about Alistair, a Marquis who's bisexual, and Robin, who is non-binary, though she does go by the pronouns of she and her. This is kind of a complicated plot, but I'll just say that Robin has been posing as Robert to essentially help out a friend of his to get her married off to a man who's very well off and has a title and all of those things. And so Robert approaches Alistair to see if he can help his friend make connections with people of nobility and things like that. Meanwhile, Alistair is very attracted to Robert and vice versa. I was just obsessed with how much chemistry and just like all of the fire emojis going on between these two main characters. Perfect amount of angst as well, and I truly cannot recommend this highly enough if you are looking for some really great LGBTQ plus historical romances. Next up, we have Kate Bateman. I have 2 books by her that I highly recommend. The first one is The Princess and the Rogue. This is a Princess Anastasia retelling. We have our main character Anya, and because of just terrible things going on in Russia, she ends up going into hiding, faking her death, and so she emerges in London with a friend of hers, and she is helping out the women that work at this brothel, and so our hero Sebastian ends up at this brothel, and that's how the two of them meet. And I just loved this so much. The thing about Kate Bateman is that, in my opinion, she is a master at writing amazing banter between her two main characters, and this was the first book that I had read by this author that I had given 5 stars. I read the 2 other books in this series probably at some point in 2020, and I enjoyed them, but I didn't love them as much as I loved this book. I think it's amazing. I just love the dynamic between these 2 main characters. I would also highly recommend Kate Bateman if you like your historical romances to be lower heat. There are still a couple of steamy scenes in all of the books that I've read by this author, but they're not as explicit as other historical romance authors that I've read from, so I did want to point that out. Another book by Kate Bateman that I read in 2021 and absolutely adored is A Reckless Match. This is book 1 in her Ruthless Rival series. This one is so fun because it definitely has a Romeo and Juliet-esque premise. We have the Davies and the Montgomerys. These families have been feuding for hundreds of years, at least like 500 years. And so we have Madeline Montgomery and Griff Davies. And so this story starts where the 2 families have agreed that on, I believe, like the winter solstice, a member from each family or representative from each family has to meet at this specific spot that's in between their 2 estates, and if one of the representatives fails to show up, a certain plot of land goes to the family that did show up. Did that make sense? I don't know. But once again, from page 1 of when these 2 characters are on page together, like, the banter is absolutely everything. The romance in this just truly is amazing. Like I said, the banter is there, but also this is like a great enemies to lovers romance. They have both believed that the other truly hated them, and so that fueled their own hate, if that makes sense, but they never actually truly hated each other. And I love that dynamic. It was just like so fun. Cannot recommend it highly enough, and I'm so excited for the next book in this series. Last but certainly not least, we have 2 books in a series by Sarah MacLean. Now, I will be honest with you, Sarah MacLean has been a little bit hit or miss for me personally. The 2 books that I'm going to mention are 2 of the first books that she ever published. And I loved them, right? But then I've also tried to read some of her more recent works and they haven't quite worked for me. I feel like she just has a very unique writing style. All of that to say, these are 2 books from her that I truly have loved. And they are in her Love by Numbers series. The first one that I have to mention is 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake. Oh, this one is so good. This is about Callie, who is a spinster, and she's totally cool with that, but she decides that she really does want to live her life even though she is a spinster. And so she creates this list of 9 things that she wants to do with her life. And basically our hero, Gabriel, he's a Marquis, they come up with this deal that if Callie helps his half-sister Juliana out, who's actually the main character of this book, and I'll get to that in a second, he will then help her with her 9 things that she wants to do. And it's just so fun. I would highly recommend this book if you're just getting into historical romance especially. Like, I feel like this is just like a perfect book to start with in the genre. It's fantastic. So freaking good. And then the third book in this series is 11 Scandals to Start to Win a Duke's Heart. Now, when I read this book, the two main characters in this were heavily featured in this book, and I was just so excited for their romance, and I'm happy to say that this book truly delivered. This one is about Juliana, who, like I mentioned, is the half-sister of Gabriel, who was the hero from 9 Rules to Break. Then we have Simon Pearson, who is known as the Duke of Disdain. He is the opposite of her in every way possible. He is so straight-laced. He is so judgmental of Juliana. Juliana is very bold and brash. She's also Italian, so she doesn't understand English society and the aristocracy and all of those things. And so that whole premise of book 1 was so that Callie could help Juliana learn about the aristocracy and all of those things. But Juliana still definitely makes mistakes, and Simon just judges the shit out of her for it. And I just adore these kinds of opposites attract, sort of like enemies to lovers romances. The vibe in this book is immaculate. It had the perfect amount of angst as well. So good. I'm not really sure which one I loved more between the two of them, because they have pretty different vibes. This one's kind of more of like a friends to lovers, which, like I said, this one's more like enemies to lovers, but like they're both absolutely fantastic. Also, while we're here, let me show you the beautiful step backs of these. Absolutely stunning. And then here is the step back for this one. With all that being said, that's going to be it for this historical romance honorable mentions video. I hope that you guys enjoyed and got some recommendations from this video. I would also love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to give me even more historical romance recommendations, because I am always looking to add to my historical romance TBR. I am absolutely obsessed. I think it's pretty clear that historical romances are truly my personal favorite subgenre of the romance genre. So I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!